Great to be with you on campus this week. I was able to take a walk and look at the athletic facility and watch some in practice and to enjoy the feel of the life here that is so vibrant and real, and I commend you for that. I thought I'd have a little fun with you this morning since the subject I've chosen for the week is so serious. I thought we'd start on a lighter note and have you enjoy a letter from home that was sent by a little boy named Cole to his mom and dad. He was at a scout camp and decided in the middle of the camp to write a letter home, and this is what he wrote. Dear Mom and Dad, our scoutmaster told us to write to our parents in case you saw the flood on TV and are worried. We're okay. Only one of our tents and 2 sleeping bags got washed away. Luckily, none of us got drowned because we were all up on the mountain looking for Chad when it happened. Oh yeah, please call Chad's mother and tell her he's okay. He can't write her because of the cast. I got to ride in one of the search and rescue Jeeps. It was really neat. We never would have found him in the dark if it hadn't been for the lightning. Our scoutmaster Walt got mad at Chad for going on a hike alone without telling anyone. Chad said he did tell him, but it was during the fire, so he probably didn't hear him. Did you know that if you put gasoline on a fire, the gas can will blow up? The wet wood didn't burn, but one of the tents did. David's going to look weird until his hair grows back. We'll be home on Saturday if Scoutmaster Walt gets the car fixed. It wasn't his fault about the wreck. The brakes worked okay when we left Scoutmaster Walt. He said that a car that old, you would have to expect something to break down. That's probably why he can't get any insurance. We think it's a neat car. He doesn't care if we get it dirty or if it's hot. Sometimes he lets us ride on the fenders. It gets pretty hot with 10 people in a car. He lets us take turns riding in the trailer until the highway patrolman stopped and talked to him about that. Scoutmaster Walt is a neat guy. He's a good driver. In fact, he's teaching Terry how to drive on the mountain roads where there isn't much traffic. Did you know you don't need guardrails on roads that don't have much traffic? All we ever see up there are logging trucks. This morning, all the guys were diving off the rocks and swimming out in the lake. Scoutmaster Walt wouldn't let me because I can't swim, and Chad was afraid he would sink because of his cast. So he let us take the canoe alone across the lake. It was really great. You can still see some of the trees under the water from the flood. Scoutmaster Walt isn't crabby like some scoutmasters. He didn't even get mad about our losing the life jackets. He has to spend a lot of time working on the car, so we're trying not to cause him any trouble. Guess what? We have all passed our first aid merit badges. When Dave dove in the lake and cut his arm, we got to see how a tourniquet works. Wade and I threw up, but Scoutmaster Walt said it probably was food poisoning from the leftover chicken. He said they got sick that way with food that they ate in prison. I'm so glad he got out of the slammer and became our scoutmaster. He said he sure figured out how to get things done better while he was doing time. I have to go now. We're going to go to town and mail our letters and buy bullets. Don't worry about anything. We are fine. Love, Cole. You know, why on earth do kids write moms and dads letters like that? It's crazy. I have a daughter who says it's now clear to me why some animals eat their young as a result of that. When you're little like that, you don't have a clue. As you grow a little older, you're supposed to get a clue. Which brings me to the statement we started with yesterday. Malcolm Muggeridge wrote, "Any happening, great or small, is a parable whereby God speaks to us. And the art of life is to get the message." I went on to talk about humility yesterday and the value of it. The reason is that when you're proud and arrogant, you don't ever get the message. You don't ever get it when you're preoccupied with yourself. The same thing happens in a nonstop, hectic schedule. When the tyranny of the urgent wins the day and keeps us from going where we ought to go, and that is deeper. Richard Foster has written several wonderful books. I hope you will read before your years are over at Wheaton, Celebration of Discipline. On the very first page, Foster writes this: superficiality is the curse of our age. The doctrine of instant satisfaction is a primary spiritual problem. The desperate need today is not for a greater number of intelligent people or gifted people, but for deep people. A major reason God led you to this school is to deepen you. I hope you get that message. I hope you never forget that message. And I hope when you look back, you will be able to say, it was in those years I deepened. I know you've got a schedule that's maddening. You have courses that push you to the brink. At the beginning of every semester, you feel scrambled. You want to tell every one of the profs, I have other classes too. This is not the only one that requires all that reading. I understand school being like it is tends to make us frantic. And in the midst of it, we will miss the message that God's plan for us in bringing us here is to grow us deeper. Maybe you hadn't thought of that. It was A.W. Tozer who wrote years ago, while he was pastor in Southside Chicago, may not the inadequacy of much of our spiritual experience be traced back to our habit of skipping through the corridors of the kingdom like children in the marketplace, always chattering about everything, but pausing to learn the true value of nothing. If you are not careful, you will develop the ability to chatter about a lot of things. Your world will be expanded. Your mind will be stretched. There will be courses that will introduce you to a vast, subtopic that you hardly knew could be addressed. And for all you know right now, that may become that realm of major for you. In the process, God has you here to get your attention, to help you turn a corner at a crossroads of your life. And for some of you, that turning will be life-changing. My Bible is open to Galatians 1, where there is a very brief vignette of a biography of the man who wrote the letter. The Apostle Paul, who, as he writes of this, was then known as Saul of Tarsus, and only that. His name was a household word among the people of his country. He was by then a Pharisee, proud, brilliant, aggressive, violent. And he was pursuing a course that was self-gratifying until God stopped him along the way and began the process of turning him around. Don't forget how I said that. Beginning a process. Rarely are we suddenly turned around. It's a process. We read in Galatians 1, verse 11, I would have you know, brothers, that the gospel which was preached by me is not according to man, For I neither received it from man, nor was I taught it, but I received it through a revelation of Jesus Christ. Then he pauses and drifts back in his memory to days gone by and reminds them of what many of them would quickly recall. You have heard of my former manner of life in Judaism, how I used to persecute the church of God beyond measure and tried to destroy it. I was advancing in Judaism beyond many of my contemporaries, being more extremely zealous for my ancestral traditions. But when he who had set me apart, even from my mother's womb, and called me through his grace, was pleased to reveal his Son in me, that I might preach him among the Gentiles, I did not immediately consult with flesh and blood, nor did I go up to Jerusalem to those who were apostles before me, but, and listen to these 5 words, I went away to Arabia. A whole different geography, a whole different climate, a whole different culture, miles removed from the familiar, multiple miles from home and all the familiarities of home. He found himself in Arabia. That's as far as I want to go with this text. This morning about 8:15, the thought hit me to paraphrase what I just read into the language of Wheaton students. So here's what I came up with. Many of my classmates and faculty members may not have heard of my former manner of life. Back home in high school, I used to fake it. Much of my faith was thin and shallow, some of it downright phony. Some of my private life was shameful, all kept a secret, and for some, a secret to this day. Oh, I did well academically. In fact, better than most of my peers. In fact, I used that to impress my parents and eclipse the emptiness within me. But somehow, by God's grace, I made it on empty. As the Lord allowed me to graduate, even though I was driven and craving to be liked, and never able to come to terms with who I am or determine what God would have me become, since I never took time for that. And at that crucial crossroad of my life, I went away to Wheaton. Now, all of a sudden, Galatians 1 is September 4, 2008. All of a sudden, it's your story. Why would God lead you here? Why would you be selected and several others you may know not chosen? Why would you have a place in this student body when there are so many others who would love to be sitting where you sit? Why you? Oh, there's all kind of guesswork you could put into that. Some great thinkers have even tried to guess why Paul went away to Arabia. John Chrysostom said he went as a missionary to evangelize a barbarous and savage people. How does Chrysostom know that? I doubt that's the reason he went to Arabia. Another says that he sought protection from unconverted Jews who became his enemies. Arabia became his escape. How does he know that? It's a guess. The best answer is given by the Venerable J.B. Lightfoot, who writes, a veil of thick darkness hangs over St. Paul's visit to Arabia. A veil of thick darkness. Truth be told, for some of you to this moment, there's a veil of darkness that hangs over your mind when you think, why exactly am I here? What is this? What are these years all about? I believe it's best to keep it simple and very practical. He went away to Arabia because he needed the discipline of solitude and obscurity. Remember I mentioned Paul was by now a household word among the people of the Jews? He needed no more of that, just as you need no more of the popularity you knew in high school. You need no more of the fawning over people or trying to please them or impress them. You need to go deeper than that. And some of you are, and I commend you. He needed time to be alone with his God, just as you do. He needed time to seek God's mind through courses like this and beyond the course that was forced upon him. I believe he lived with Bedouins he didn't even know. I believe he spent time watching sunsets, thinking away from the crowds of what on earth this future of mine is going to be like. I went away to Arabia. He was there to hear God's voice. You who love to get into the wilderness know there's something about distance in a wilderness that brings the voice of God closer. There's something about the mountain peaks. There's something about the crashing waves along a shoreline. There's something about life away from home. The familiar places where you spent your years, away from mom and dad, away from the names that are just a part of your life that you could click off one after another, of people who were your peers in school. There's a reason you're in this Arabia. Part of it is to break old habits. And you know them so much better than I. My own take full time of my life, and so I leave yours with you. You need to reorder your private world. That's part of the reason you've been led to Wheaton. When we look back over Paul's shoulders and we see his lifestyle, we see a man who carried out treacherous things that haunted him the rest of his years. He's even said to his friend Timothy, I was a violent aggressor. He had blood on his hands. Innocent Christians. And now he has time in Arabia to reflect on that. And if I read this section correctly, he doesn't return until years pass. At least 3 before he's back in Jerusalem to take on the mantle of his calling and what we would call his life career for the next 2 or more decades. It's a pretty impressive list of things from his past. He was busy about pleasing people, verse 10. He's actively engaged in a misguided course of life, verse 13. He's advancing more than his peers. He's extremely zealous for his convictions, verse 14. Pretty impressive. He was busy and active and engaged and advancing and zealous, but he wasn't deep. The founder of our seminary, where I was trained, once wrote that so much of our busyness is little more than a cheap anesthetic to deaden the pain of an empty life. Just stay busy. I challenge you this morning to slow down. Deliberately and purposefully discipline yourself toward solitude. It was during my fall semester as a young first-year seminary student to hear the president, I should say the pastor of Moody Bible Church, who was then Dr. Alan Redpath. Dr. Redpath from Great Britain had a way of saying things that sort of stuck, and I'll never forget his line. The conversion of a soul is the miracle of a moment. The making of a saint, however, is the task of a lifetime. When you entered Wheaton College, God had in mind for you another direction than you have taken thus far. I don't know what it is. It's here you will find out who you are, hopefully. I'm asked frequently by younger men in ministry, what are some things you can help us with as we get underway? I say, I tell them I pass on to you what I've never read anywhere else but has helped me the most. Know who you are. In the process of time, accept who you are. And finally, spend your life being who you are. Truth be told, some of you haven't gotten to first base in that. You don't know who you are. So you're working hard to be someone else, or like somebody else, or like a composite of others you admire. It's not God's plan for you. You're you. You're the only one. You have a sphere of responsibility and influence in the future that you today cannot even imagine. What you don't realize is the value of these years in Arabia. And I want to make you aware of that. I want you to know that September isn't just another month to come and go and pass into oblivion. It's a significant month in your life, never to be lived again. So will be October. So will be the long winter months here in the North Midwest. Not just another cold season, but a season to deepen. Listen. Listen like Paul listened at sunset in Arabia. Listen in the early morning hours. Pay attention to what the prophet doesn't say. Read between the lines. As Foster put it, we don't need more intelligent people or more gifted people. We need deep people. This chapel was named after the man who wrote these words. We live in a restless, impatient day. We have little time for preparation and less for meditation or worship. We feel we must be active, energetic, enthusiastic, and humanly effective. And we cannot understand why inactivity and weakness, weariness, and seeming uselessness should become our lot. It all appears to be so futile and foolish now, without plan or purpose. Some of you just getting underway, cultivate the discipline of spending some time all alone. Others of you are well on your way. There are seniors sitting here, only months until graduation. Take time. Take time. Go deeper. Cultivate things that aren't a part of the curriculum. The conversion of a soul is the miracle of a moment, making of a saint. It's a task of a lifetime. Bow with me, will you? The prophet is written, as the rain comes down and the snow from heaven and returns not without watering the earth and making it bring forth and bud, even so shall my word be that goes forth out of my mouth. It shall never return void, but will accomplish the thing for which I sent it. May Galatians 1 become, for some of these students, the beginning of a process where solitude and quietness and even obscurity replaces the need for popularity and activity and impressing people and pleasing others. Help these students, Father, to discover who they are, to accept how you have made them, and then to become your women and men in a world that's lost its way. For Jesus' sake. Everyone said, amen. Thank you.
You're watching WETN TV, a broadcasting service of Wheaton College. For a copy of this program, please call the Media Resources Department of Wheaton College at 752-5061.